Hello friends, we are going live for week 3 of the Stitch and Stash Tote Sew-along. I apologize to people in advance who would have liked to have known what time I was going live, because I usually put a countdown in, but it's just been a long week, so and we're just pulling it together. So I hope this time works for the people that wanted to attend it live, and then you, of course, will post the replay on YouTube and send it out in our newsletter email as well. That will go out some point today. Usually the late afternoon is when I get the email finished and ready to go out. So there's our little overview. But today for the Stitch and Stash Sew-along, we are covering handles and pockets. So we're going to talk all the details about the handles and pockets for our bag. I'm going to pull out a bag so that you can see. When I was designing this bag, that was one of the things I really tried to focus on, was lots of pockets, because if you've made the All the Things tote and loved it, maybe one of... Oh, there goes my watch. One of the things that people always ask is, like, how do we add more pockets? And there are ways to do that for the All the Things tote, but I just didn't write them into the pattern because I imagined it just being this catch-all tote, right? So when I was designing this one, I was like, I want to be really intentional about all of the pockets that we're adding for this. So I'm just going to do a quick overview of the pockets. We have our front zipper pocket here. I guess you could use this as the back too. We have the back slip pockets that I divided for this one. If you wanted it to be big and open, you could definitely leave out these stitchings, but there are 2 slip pockets here. And then inside the bag, we have, on the front side there, I divided this 3 ways. So you could probably customize these if you wanted, but I did 3 equal slip pockets on the front inside of the bag. And on the back inside of the bag, I just split it the same as when you stitch that division line. There's 2 slip pockets on the inside, as well as we have our little mesh water bottle pocket. And I showed it in our first week with this is a 32 ounce Awala Free Sip bottle, and I wanted to show it in the bag there, and there we go. And so many people ask, like, what size water bottle can go in? So I grabbed, this is a 40 ounce hydro jug with a handle. So this would probably work with like a Stanley or a Yeti or Simple Modern, or anyways, that's the 40 ounce. And you can kind of turn the handle so that it kind of like goes into the edge, but I just wanted to show that because I know people asked about the water bottle pocket and how big of a tumbler mug that you could put into it. So it's big enough for the big water bottles. Okay, so we're just going to talk about handles first, and then we'll get into the pockets, but I just wanted to do that overview. So this particular bag has fabric covered handles. I used this polypro webbing, and I covered it with a fabric tube. And this one has a decorative webbing that I just sewed on, right? So we're going to talk about your choices and using both, and maybe tips for using both when you're working in the pattern. So in the pattern, I have instructions for both. If you're using a decorative webbing, this is the one I'm considering using on my bag. And it's so funny because I was rewatching a live from Anne from Stitch Supply, and she made her bag out of the same fabric as mine, and she used this webbing. And I was like, it's so cute. So I am considering using this on mine. I haven't quite decided what handles I'm using. So I'm considering using this decorative webbing. So when you're using a decorative webbing, it will just say cut these lengths, and then it will say skip these steps if you're using a decorative webbing. And when I mean decorative, it could be like a printed webbing, a solid webbing, whatever, but it just means that they're not fabric covered webbing. So if you're using fabric, what you'll do, this one has already been ironed, so I apologize, it doesn't look exactly like it would look like, but so this is the fabric tube, and I sewed it in half with my 1/4 inch seam And then I just wanted to share a couple of tools that I like to use for flipping handles. So I've shared these before, but I love a tube turner. Dritz has one that's awesome. It comes with 3 sizes. I personally carry the Prim ones because they have hot pink and I like hot pink. So, and there's only 2 sizes in this set, so it's just a little bit cheaper. And I've never used the small size in Dritz, so I just figured I would sell. This is the one I stock on my website, but like I'm saying, there's some out there as well that are probably just as good. So the tube turner comes with 2 sticks. This is like a plastic tube, pretty wide, and then this like wooden dowel stick. And you will stick your plastic tube into your fabric tube. And I always like to do it like a thumb's length. I measure with my thumb. That's how far I'm sticking that plastic tube in. And you don't want to let go of it. You want to hold on to it tight. And this has like a really pointy end and a more blunt end. And for some reason, I just prefer the blunt end. I don't want to like poke through a hole in my fabric. So you're just going to jam the fabric like right up. You aren't trying to push a hole, like the fabric all the way through so that it like the stick can move through the tube. I hope I'm explaining that right. But you want to just jam that fabric in there. Okay. And then we're just going to push it on, and your handles will be a lot longer than this piece, but this is just a scrap piece I'm using to demo. So you'll just push it all the way on and keep scrunching it off the tube. If it's longer, you may need to just like hold this. I like to hold the stick. Here's my wooden stick and the tube, and then pull off the fabric off the bottom end and then keep scrunching it on if it's longer, right? But the key is to just not let go of these while you're flipping it. Okay. So now I can pull this off, and then I just work that stick out the top, right? Okay, there we go. Now I want it to come out. Oh, I forgot to mention, before you flip it, you want to iron that seam open. I should have showed you. I'm going to flip it again real quick. Someone just asked, I'm late to the party. What are we making? We are in week 3 of the Stitch and Stash Sew-along, and we are talking about handles and pockets this week. So I'm just doing a quick demo on if you're using fabric to cover your handles. Okay, so I already ironed the seam open, and the way I do that is I lay it on my ironing board and I put the seam on one, like the left side or the right side, whatever side, and I just iron the seam open like this. So then I don't press a hard crease on this side, and I just press the seam open over here. So that's how I like to press my seam open. Okay, so I'm going to just flip this real fast because I forgot to share the pressing tool or the pressing instructions, and that's pretty important. Okay, see, that's how quick this thing is. This is like my favorite tool if you're going to ever cover handles. It's like worth it to get that. Okay, so then what you'll do is take this to your iron and then press it with the seam in the center. I don't know if you can really see that great. There you go. You can press it with the seam in the center. Like I said, this was just a leftover from a handle that I had already made, so that's why it's already pressed. So nice. So, okay, and then I have my Poly Pro webbing. So this is like the polypropylene webbing, so it's a little bit plasticky, right? It's really strong and durable. I really like this stuff for covering because it slides through easily. Like if you're trying to use a decorative webbing inside your fabric tube, it may not pull in very nice because they're not meant to be covered. But these are. Okay, you can use a large safety pin and pull this through, and that works awesome. And everyone probably has a large safety pin. I recently got introduced to this product. This is the Clover Bodkin Clip and Glide is what it's called. And I really like this because it's so long, but I also like it because it's a lot easier to get off the end when you're doing it. So it's just got this little clip, and then if you open this up, there's some like little teeth in there. I don't know if you can see them, but they just like grip on really nice. So you just kind of clip that on to the end of your thing, and it like stays on pretty good. And then you can use this to thread your webbing through your handle, your fabric handle. So I really have liked this. It's probably an unnecessary notion, but if you want them, we have them in the shop because I like them. And I've been using it ever since I purchased one. So, the thing I really like is I'm like, oh, I don't want to have to pull my webbing all the way through to get my safety pin out, right? And usually that's what you have to do, but I like this because I can just flip that thing and then kind of just like wiggle that out and it comes right off. So then I have this if I need to tuck the end in, which for your handles you won't need to because the seam will, or the webbing will go right to the edge, and it will be a raw edge that will be sewn into the bottom seam. But when you're doing like, I think it's like a carrying strap on other patterns, you would do that. Anyways, so there you go. There you have it. So then once you get your webbing in, I take this to my sewing machine and I do a top stitch on both sides, an 1/8 inch top stitch on both sides. And if you have one of those metal seam guides, that would be awesome to stick in place to like help feed your webbing through so it just stays nice and even. I don't have one of those for my sewing machine, but I like to set my hands down on my sewing machine like this and just like anchor my hand in place. And then I put these 2 fingers like, so it can just slide right through. And I let the feed dogs do the work, right? Because that's what they're there for. So I don't need to like feed it through myself. I just let the machine pull it. And I just like to anchor my hands and let that pull right through. Okay, so there's my tips for covering our webbing with fabric, if you're making fabric handles. And I don't really have any tips for doing the decorative webbing because you just have to cut your pieces and sew them on. So it does save you a lot of time, which is one of the reasons why we love decorative webbing. And there's so many cute colors and prints and designs. So we have lots of designs on our website, and lots of other great shops are carrying lots of options. So there's decorative webbing. Okay, and I covered the products. Okay, so pockets. We're going to move on to pockets. So I wanted to go over the zipper pocket, the back slip pocket, and the interfaced pockets on the inside, and the water bottle mesh pocket. So we're just going to share tips on those. I personally do not have my front pocket, my front zip pocket ready to share with you because I'm still working on my paper piecing. So I have been working on this for all week. I am paper piecing knot and thread to go into my front pocket because I'm taking my bag to QuiltCon, so I thought it would be fun to embellish it. I'm trying still to decide if I'm going to do like a ampersand or a plus, because I want it to fit across my pocket, and I don't have that much space, so I couldn't fit the word and. So I just wanted to show you my progress on my paper piecing. I also got one of Liza's patterns that she shared last week. This is her heart star block. And I was going to put this in one of my side gussets. I was going to do 3 of them. They're so cute. And then once I finished one, I was like, oh, I need to put it on the front pocket because the front pocket's so big, I have space to do it. So my plan is to do 2 more of these, to do 3 stars, and then do my knot and thread either on top or on bottom. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to lay it out, but so I don't have my front pocket quilted or all the way ready, which is fine because I'm going to demo on the back pocket how we do our zippers. So this is my back pocket on my bag. I've already bound the top edge, and I'm just going to pretend like it's my front zipper pocket for the time being because, like I said, I'm still working on my front zipper pocket. So I picked this zipper to be my zipper tape. This is one of our new colors that we offer in the shop. It's called Granny Smith. It's like this bright, vibrant green, and it's so fun. So this is going to be my zipper. So I wanted to just show you, I was going to just do talk about a couple things with zippers. So in this pattern, we have zipper tabs. You'll have the zipper tabs in the accent fabric that you'll have cut out. They're this big. They're this size, right? And what you're going to do, and I'll just demo on this end. Pretend this is the length I needed. I have this piece way longer, but what we're going to do is just fold this around, right sides together. So you're just going to fold this long piece in half, and you're going to put it so that the fold is even on the bottom edge of the tape, and then the raw edges all line up here, right? And then you'll just do a 1/4 inch seam. So I've already sewn that on this side, and I just wanted to show because people always ask me questions on this, and I think it's just because it's maybe something they've never seen before. It might be a little bit different, but the reason we do that, so then you can pull this out, right? So then we have this nice little zipper tab. So then we're not sewing the thickness of the zipper into the seam. We have a little bit of like excess fabric here so that we're sewing this into the seam so it reduces bulk in the seam, but it also adds like a little decorative touch to it. So it's raw on the top here, raw on the side, and a fold on the bottom. And the reason it's like that is because when we put this zipper on our pocket, which we'll do like this on our front zipper pocket, like this, right? We will put that there. It's raw on the inside, right? On the inside, it's like, it's just top stitched down, and I wanted it to be finished right here. And then this side will be sewn into a seam, and the top will be covered with binding. So those raw edges will be covered when you sew your zipper in. So I just wanted to kind of explain that because I know that I get questions on the zipper tabs quite a bit, and so I hope that that's helpful to see the visual. And, okay, I picked a zipper pull, so I'm going to do a quick demo on adding a zipper pull. So I'm going to do this little heart one. And you're going to split your tape. If you have a zipper with a zipper pull, you don't need to pull the zipper pull off. But if you're using like zippers by the yard, or if you have a scrap zipper left over and you get a pull for it, you want to reuse that zipper, you can do that. So you're going to split your zipper tape, and I think it's just always helpful to understand how the zipper works, like the zipper pull, right? So it has a round end, which is the end that goes towards the zipper teeth, and a flat end. And if you can see too that the split in the body of the zipper pull head is more towards the bottom of the pull. So I just think that that's helpful to know, and I know that you can look at that and see that, but I think when you're putting a zipper pull on, you want to like understand where you're aiming to get this fabric tape, this zipper tape in. And I always do it without any tools, but there's a tool called the zipper jig that's really handy. So I just like feed it on, and then I try to like even out where the zipper teeth are so that they're even, right? This particular zipper pull is probably a harder one to pull on because there's like rings. If you just have a zipper pull, it's a lot easier to do than one of these ones that have like that this is loose, you know. But I do like an upside down V. You can see like these, I fed these in like an upside down V, and then I'll just like hold on to it and pull it on. And I know I made that look really easy, but just keep practicing. It does get easier the more you do it. Okay, so there's my zipper that's on my pull. So now I will like cut this to length. I'll add my other zipper tab, and then that zipper will be ready to go. But because I didn't cut this, and I'm faking this, right? Because this pocket that I'm adding it onto is really my back pocket, so I'm not actually adding the zipper to this one because I'm working on my front pocket. Okay, this is another notion that I think is so awesome to have in your stash. This is Bayani's double-sided basting tape. It's like 1/8 of an inch thick. It's very narrow. It's a double-sided tape. So what I'm going to do is add this to the back side of my binding on my front zipper pocket. So I'm just going to use this for demo purpose because it's so awesome to see. Okay, and I think this helps so much because if you've ever like tried to get your zipper to like line up really evenly, or you're working on like spacing, how far away from the zipper teeth do I want to put this, you know, and you try to pin it and it moves or shifts, it's like, it can be tricky, right? So I added my basting tape to the wrong side of my binding. And then I'm going to pull off the paper and leave the sticky part, right? So I'm just pulling off the basting. And now I'm going to center this on my zipper. And the thing I like about the basting tape is it's repositionable, right? If I wanted that to be closer, I could, or further away, I could just like figure out where I want that. So you're going to just center your zipper. Obviously, I still need to add a zipper tab here, but it makes it so nice to keep it in place. And so then you're going to top stitch along the top edge of this pocket binding, and I like to go over that bottom stitching that I already stitched when I sewed my binding down. So I like to stitch it and reinforce it in the top of the binding and the bottom of the binding. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, so there will be my front zipper pocket. So there's my tips on zippers. And I think we covered all the things for zippers. That's that. Okay. And then let's do our inside pockets. Our inside pockets are interfaced. So you'll have your pocket piece. I'm using this Icon, Selvage Magic Icon fabric for my inside pockets. So you're going to have a big square. You're going to have a big square. And you want to make sure that that the width is the 16.5-inch side that's the same width as your bag, right? So I'm going to iron that just in half with my 16.5-inch on the width. And if you can see, this fabric is now upside down. So I want to use this as my front of my pocket. And then you have your 2 pieces of interfacing that you have cut, the SF-101. And then I'm just going to open up my pocket after I ironed it in half. And then I'm going to lay this interfacing with the glue side down right underneath that fold in the pocket. And I'm going to just iron that in place. Okay, I have one already ironed. So I lined it up and I already ironed it in place below that fold. So then I'm going to fold it down and I'm going to do a top stitch. I like to do an 1/8-inch top stitch just along the top fold to keep that interfacing in place, and then just as decorative stitching as well. So there will be my pockets. So those will be done now. So that was easy. Those interface pockets are super easy. Okay, and then let's see. The back slip pocket is just bound like this. You're just going to bind it. So you have your binding, and if you want some binding tips for doing that binding, you're just going to fold your binding in half and you sew it to the lining side with a 1/4-inch seam, and then you wrap it over to the front. I like to use my stiletto to hold that in place, but there will be stitching underneath this because I just stitched it down, and I want my binding to wrap over and to cover that stitching on the front, right? Because I don't want to be able to see that stitching on this side. I want it to cover. So I like to do it and then stitch right on the edge of this. If you have Wonder Clips, you can use Wonder Clips to keep it in place, to like clip your binding in place like this to hold it down when you're sewing it down, because that can be really helpful. But you can use your stiletto as well to like pull it over if it's pulling and you're like, oh, I need it to just like be over a little bit. Do that. Use your stiletto. And then any of these bindings can be a good place to add like a label. So I added this label. This is one of Cape Pearl Creates from her shop. This little hexy flower, which I think the colors worked so good on my bag, so I'm excited I could add that. Just note that your handles will be behind it. So like, let's see, I can show you on this one. So I added one to my front zip pocket here. I added 3 here, which I think they turned out really cute. And then I added one in the back before I realized where my handle placement is. I don't mind it. It doesn't bother me, but if you wanted it to like line up with the handle, maybe just measure where your handle placement is and you can like plan ahead for things like that. If that's important to you, I'm going to show you the ones I added on. So that was my first one I made. So then the next time I was like, oh yeah. So then I did it just off the handle. This one says you can't buy this. It's one of my favorite Kylie and the Machine labels. And then this one I added in the front. This is one of Renaissance Ribbons labels. The colors were so perfect. Anyways. Oh, and 2 others I added. For the sunglass pouch, I added, this one is Renaissance Ribbon, and that's the Sarah Hart's one. So anyways, there's lots of bindings on the bag, so you can plan where you want to put your labels. We have quite a few labels in our shop from lots of different companies, and then some of our own as well, which we recently launched last year. So And I have these little cases that I keep them in. You can get these little cases on Amazon. But this is how I just like go and pick which labels, I want to add. I have a few. I just grabbed 3 of like my 6, but it's my favorite thing to collect these days is labels. So don't forget your labels. That's just your label reminder. If you have glanced over the pattern, I am trying to help you out not to forget the labels. So we are going to start this from going forward in our patterns with these little icons, right? Like this, that says add in a sew and label here, like under the binding, right? So we're trying to help you remember your labels. And you can always use washi, stick it on your machine or pin it in place. Or I like to use the double-sided tape that I just showed you from Annie's and like just kind of stick it in place where I want it so that it's already there. Okay, so that's all for those pockets. The last pocket we're going to talk about is our water bottle pocket, but I'm going to go and answer this question that just came in. Any tips for using the decorative webbing and its thickness? I think that's a great question. And I don't know if I talked about it on any of the lives, but I recommend using a Top Stitch 9014 needle. So it's a heavier needle. It's like a jeans size needle. I really like the Top Stitch style of needle. So that can be really helpful. Another tip that I like to give as well is, and we should talk about that because I have all my pieces cut out, right? So I have all my bag cut out here. And I know that this isn't directly related to your question on webbing, but all my pieces are cut out. And after you cut them out, you need to do this 1/8 inch top stitch around all of the pieces, all the quilted pieces. So I know that's kind of hard to see because I used thread that matched. But it's like a victory lap. Sometimes you do something called a victory lap on your quilts just to keep your seams from all staying and from like pulling apart if you're like sending it or handling it, if you're quilting it yourself. So don't skip that step. And so I know that it seems like, oh, but it's just like a extra step and takes more time. It's really valuable at the end of your bag when you're putting all the layers together, because all those layers come together and that stitching helps compress those seam allowances, right? And it just kind of keeps it a little bit compressed. Compressed is the word. Compresses all of those seams, so then when you're sewing it together, it sews together easily, more easily, right? Another tip I have is wonder clips. Once you get your bag all in place how you want it, so we're going to just pretend like, okay, this is, I guess I didn't bring all my pieces in here. Here's my pretend this is my front pocket, here, my bag front, and then we're going to just pretend this is the gusset. So that's like 3 thicknesses here that we're going to be sewing together. What I recommend doing, and we'll talk about this more in the construction portion of the bag, but if you have a lot of clips, you can clip. In long arm quilting, we call this head to toe pinning. When we like pin every inch, but you can clip head to toe, I guess. Just add lots of clips like this and leave it overnight and then sew through it the next day. This just helps compress all of it, and it will help in the spot where you're webbing, when you're sewing through all the layers of your webbing as well. So anyways, that's my tip for sewing through thickness. You can just like clip, clip, clip and leave it overnight and then come back to it, and you'll be amazed at how much easier it is to just sew through those layers. So, okay. I hope that was helpful. I'm just going to make sure I haven't missed any other questions. Okay, so the last pocket that we're going to talk about today is our water bottle pocket. So if you've never used mesh before, I like by Annie's Mesh. She has it in a bunch of colors. We have them all in our shop. These pockets are cut square, right? So you want to pay attention. This is important. You want to pay attention to the grain of how it stretches, right? I want it to stretch this way. I want it to be able to wrap around my water bottle and stretch this way. So when you're sewing your elastic bindings onto your mesh, you want to be careful to be paying attention to the grain of your mesh, okay? And basically you just top stitch it. This is just fold over elastic. This is one of the new colors that we have in our shop, which I'm so excited that we could offer these fun neon bright colors. And so I just started it because I wanted to show you how I like to start it. I just like to, you can clip it on like this. Sorry, I know that that's hard to see. You do a little clip and then you're just going to start stitching. If you want to put a needle down and hold on to your top and bottom threads on your sewing machine to help you pull that through your machine at the very beginning, do that, because that can be so helpful. Because sometimes, because this is so thin, our machine doesn't like it. It doesn't like how thin it is and it wants to eat it. If you have a single stitch plate on your sewing machine, and if you don't know what that is, the plate that goes on your sewing machine, it has a little hole where your needle goes through. Most machines come with a plate that has a bigger hole because you can do like zigzag stitches or decorative stitches, and so your needle has to go through that whole width of space, right? But if you have a single stitch plate that you can get for your sewing machine and swap it out where it just goes single, so you only want to use that when you're doing a straight stitch, it can be really helpful not to eat up any of these thin layers that you're sewing through. That can be helpful when you're sewing quilts too. If you've ever run into that problem, if you're sewing like half square triangles or any of those things. Anyways, so hold your top and bottom threads and then just stick your needle down and start sewing and pull it through. And then I just like to fold it as I go, and I don't stretch the elastic as I sew. So make sure you cut the piece the length that you need. And you're just going to line up that mesh right at that fold line and then just top stitch right along that edge. So you can see on this side, I just top stitched right along the edge of the elastic. And I always recommend changing your thread to match the colors because you'll just like it that much more, and it takes only 20 seconds, right? It's worth it to change the thread to match because you'll be much happier with the outcome. Okay. I think that's everything. I think that's everything for the week. We were just going to go over pockets. So you can finish up cutting and quilting your fabrics. We're going to bind and make our front zip pocket. We're going to interface our inner pockets. We're going to get our water bottle pocket ready, the mesh pocket. And then next week we will be putting everything together. I think that's our last week of the sew-along, is it? I feel like my mind's a little scattered with everything that's been going on in the world and otherwise. So I had to even look at the schedule today. I was like, what are we working on? Anyways, so I am hoping to sew parts, probably not all of the bag, but parts of the bag live with you next week, because I know the part I want to sew live with you on our live put in the video is the binding of the bag, because I know that that's always the part that people have the most questions, and I do think it's helpful to see it. So plan on that. We'll be sewing the bag together live next week, and as always, if you have questions, drop them out in the comments below after I post this. Oh, someone just said, I tried FPP this weekend. It was so fun. Oh, I'm so glad. I hope the FPP portion of the sew-along has been fun. If you missed it, I did a live with Caterpillar. It was kind of impromptu on Friday, so you can go, it's like 2 posts back in my feed. I'm going to put a link in our newsletter email too, and you can watch it. But I tried to give like a few little demos about using their light boards and FPP and how I've used it in the prep of my FPP for my pocket. So I'm really excited about that. So if you're interested in that, I think that will be helpful to watch those. And they did give me a discount code that's good till February 7th, which is our last day of our sew-along. So that's awesome. And they said they never give codes that long. So I was feeling pretty happy because I know it's always hard to watch it and do it right away. So you can always refer back to that. And someone said that they will be excited to see the binding live. Yeah, I think that will be great. And then you can ask questions of that. And I will try to do better at posting the time it will be live so that you guys can plan around it. But sometimes that's just not how my life works. So anyways, I hope you guys will have a great weekend. And I will catch you next week. And if you have questions, as always, send me a DM. Hit reply on the newsletter email. Ask the questions there. And I will get your questions answered. So I hope you have a great day. I'll chat with you guys soon.